Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. One cannot fail to be impressed upon entering this ancient and sacred temple of Srirangam Swami. And the impression that we get from this is that the devotees who constructed this temple considered Bhakti the most important aspect of existence. Obviously, this temple has been constructed with much endeavor, at much cost, with much skill, with much expertise, skill. Why should anyone do that? Well, that's what it's reputed that Jawaharlal Nehru, when he came here, he was not so pleased. He thought that so much endeavor has been built for what? He said that the temples of modern India will be the factories and the dams. Fortunately, many people in India are still more intelligent than some certain so-called philosophers. They don't come for darshan to the factories. They come to Srirangam and Tirupati and so many places like this. So Bhagavan is omnipresent, but not everyone is able to sense His presence everywhere. So these temples are places which are especially meant for people to come and develop their bhakti and offer service. So wherever there is a temple of the Supreme Lord, Narayana, Vishnu, Krishna, that is a very special place. But in one sense, some are more important than others. So this temple is very special inasmuch as Sri Ranganatha Swami has chosen this place to stay for himself. He is the first deity manifest in this world at the time of creation and was worshipped directly by Lord Rama and specifically wanted to stay here, and he has been worshipped by all the great devotees of the Ramanuja Sampradaya. So this is a great place of bhakti. Therefore, those who are devotionally inclined are attracted to this place. And even persons who are not very devotionally inclined, they're attracted. We see buses with Western tourists coming, and the guides will tell them about the architecture. But the architecture isn't the point. Everything is for the pleasure of Sri Ranganatha Swami. So even though they're attracted by the externalities, they cannot but be impressed by the endeavor that has gone into create such a temple. For the Gauriya Vaishnavas, the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, this is our second home, our home in the south. For Gauriya Vaishnavas, the principal places of worship are Navadvip, Vrindavan and Puri. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu spent 24 years in Navadvip, 18 years in Puri, and all the time in Vrindavan. Although he was only personally there for 1 month, but he said, Anya hriday mon, mora mon Vrindavan. That for other people the mind is their heart, but for me, my mind is Vrindavan. He's always absorbed in Vrindavan. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, during the 48 years of his manifest pastimes, spent most time in Navadvip, and the second longest period in Puri, and the third longest period, although it was considerably shorter than the other two, here in Srirangam. This is a great place of bhakti, even today. Here, of course, the center of worship is Sri Ranganatha Swami. There are many sannadhis or shrines, but the central one is of Sri Ranganatha Swami. The Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally chanted the names of Krishna and danced before Sri Ranganatha Swami for 4 months here at this place. And at that time he was very warmly received by the local Vaisnavas. And up to the present time, the Vaisnavas of the Ramanuja Sampradaya have always been very welcoming to and appreciative of the followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In Srimad Bhagavatam we have the term Udaradhi, broad-minded. So the Vaishnavas of the Ramanuja Sampradaya are broad-minded enough to appreciate that although there are differences in understanding between the Ramanuja Sampradaya and the Gauriya Sampradaya, the essence is the same. According to the Siddhanta of the Ramanuja Sampradaya, Vishnu is, or Narayan is the, we can say the original form from which all other forms manifest. And according to the Gauriya Sampradaya, Krishna is the form from whom even Narayan and all the other forms manifest. But this is not anything to be argued about between the members of the different sampradayas, because both agree that Krishna and Narayana, they are only the same person in different forms, the same supreme person in different forms. And actually, it's a matter of perspective. If one considers the greatness of Bhagavan, then we will be attracted to the four-handed form of Narayana. If we are attracted to his greatness, his majesty, his opulence. But if we are more attracted to the sweetness of the Supreme Person, even overriding his majesty, then we will be more attracted to Krishna. So according to Tattva Vichar, or philosophical deliberation, the Supreme is Narayana, who rules in Vaikuntha. And according to Rasa Vichar, the Supreme is one naughty little boy who plays a flute and steals butter. So it doesn't seem to make sense that the Supreme can be engaged in apparently petty matters like taking cows out to pasture. We might think that, well, the Supreme has got more important things to do than take cows out to pasture and play on a flute. But actually, Krishna, he considers taking his cows out, dancing with the gopis, playing his flute, much more important than creating, maintaining and destroying millions of universes. When the gopis steal Krishna's flute, getting it back is much more important to him than whether millions of universes are being maintained or not. Of course, Krishna is also the speaker of the Bhagavad Gita, in which he says, Mayadhyakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam hetunanena kaunteya jagad viparivartate. Under my superintendence, this whole universe is running on. It is created, maintained and destroyed. The moving and non-moving living beings, they're all taken care of. So that's all going on under Krishna's direction. In the meantime, he's herding his cows. So it's a matter of taste. Matter of ruchi, taste. That some devotees are attracted to the majesty and opulence of the Supreme, and some are more attracted to His sweet pastimes. We just sung this song about Krishna, Madhuradhipater Akilam Madhuram. He is the Lord of all sweetness. Everything about Him is sweet. His lips are sweet. His face is sweet. His eyes are sweet. His laughing is sweet. His heart is sweet. His movement is sweet. Everything about Him is sweet. Everything about Him is great also. So both greatness and sweetness are His natural, inseparable attributes. But in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's analysis, Madhurja Bhagavatasa, the essence of God's godness is His sweetness. The essence of God's godness, Bhagavan ki Bhagavata, what makes Him God? It's not that what makes Him God is not so much His greatness in creating, maintaining and destroying millions of universes, but in His sweetness. So I was saying that Srirangam is our second home, our home in the south. So our first home is Vrindavan. Srila Prabhupada himself said that his home is Vrindavan. In Srirangam, everyone thinks of Ranganatha Swami. In Vrindavan, everyone thinks of Krishna. Is that right? Maybe in Vrindavan they think of Radha more. At least most of the people in Vrindavan, they say Jai Radhe. So we see in the Vaisnava temples in the south that there's the main Sannadhi of Sri Ranganatha Swami, and at the side there's a separate one, the Tayar Sannadhi. Tayar or Lakshmi has her own little palace on the side. But in the Gauriya Sampradaya we put Radha and Krishna together, which is actually very intimate, because in the traditional Indian house, the women, they have their own quarters, and the men, they have their own quarters. And we put Radha, or we worship Radha and Krishna together, knowing that Krishna, for all his opulence, he never even though he's fully satisfied in himself, he cannot feel happy without Radha. So this great holy place is dedicated to Sri Ranganatha Swami, and Vrindavan is dedicated to Vrindavaneshwari, Sri Radha. Here the Vaishnavas, they chant Om Namo Narayana, and in Vrindavan Jai Radhe, or better, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna means Radha and Krishna together, as they like to be. So, as I was saying, it's a matter of taste. But no doubt this place has been a place of intense bhakti for many generations. In the past, there was much rivalry between two sects of the Sampradaya here, the Tengalaya and Vadagalaya. And they were actually quite inimical to each other. But they were inimical because the center was how to understand and how to worship Bhagavan Narayana. Maybe you have noticed that the gopurams, or the great pillars or gates, they're all painted in different colors. But one of them is not painted, one is white. So from this white gopuram, in previous times, the brahmanas would sometimes jump and commit suicide as a protest to the ruling kings that they're not administering properly the service of Ranganatha Swami. They felt so much for the service of the Lord that they would do that. Well, you may ask, well, the present kings are they're so badly seeing, or the present government is so badly saying to the administration that all the brahmanas should jump off. But the government is so atheistic, they'd probably be happy. They wouldn't care at all. They'd be grateful. They'd probably put a bunch of beef eaters in instead. So it's a very difficult time in many ways for the worshippers here, the archakas. Since actually when the British were ruling here in this country, they maintained all the traditions of the temples. And when India got independence, one of the first things the government did was to loot all the temples and take all the land away, and in this way, and take over all the temples and take all the money, and in this way it destroyed the culture. So in many ways the Indians have been their own worst enemies. Even the British had enough sense to maintain the religious culture. The brahmanas would jump in protest because then the kings, they're supposed to feel that what a terrible thing they are doing, the kings themselves. By doing so, the brahmanas were implicating the kings in the terrible sin of Brahma Hatya, killing a brahmana. But in the modern age, no one cares. And actually, in many ways, the brahmanas themselves are committing Brahma Hatya. By giving up their culture, they're killing what makes them a brahmana is their culture, and by not following that, they're killing the Brahmin of themselves, and they're becoming Shudras and less. There was such feeling previously that the Brahmanas, they would jump off the Gopuram, but unfortunately nowadays, even many of the Brahmanas, they spend more time watching TV than being in the temple where they're supposed to be doing service. So Brahmanas are meant for spiritual culture, for studying Shastra, worshipping the Lord. But many have become like Shudras or less, just watching nonsense things on TV. And many today are more interested in cricket and computers and money and career than in worshipping the Lord. Of course, in many ways the Brahmanas, they can't be blamed for the downfall of their culture. They've been forced by financial constraints because there are no more rajas to support them, and then the government is supposed to be maintaining the temple, but they don't give them enough to maintain their families. So they've been forced to take up secular occupations simply to maintain their families. Definitely it's a very difficult time for Vaisnava culture. Many people come to these temples still. Still people have a feeling to come to the temple. But due to a lack of proper guidance, people go to the temple, they come out, but they have no knowledge of how to make spiritual advancement. And in most temples, and no one even thinks to give them any knowledge of how they can spiritually improve themselves. So this International Society for Krishna Consciousness has been founded to, in a systematic way, give people factual knowledge of their relationship with Narayana, Krishna, and a practical method for spiritual advancement in the modern age. In the modern age, no one can follow all the rules and regulations as previously they did. Just to give one example, if anyone has an attached bathroom in their house, they pass stool in the same house, you can't cook or worship the Lord in that house. Surrender, self-surrender to Vishnu. Yeah, Sharanagati. Shadividha Sharanagati. So in the Gauriya Vaishnavas, they emphasize the principles of Srimad Bhagavatam, ahaituki apratihata seva, unmotivated, never stopped, constant service to the transcendent Lord, adhokshaja. So we invite all the devotionally minded people to take up the path of Bhagavad Gita as it is. By chanting the holy name of Krishna, we get great strength from Krishna, spiritual strength. And practically speaking, we see that many people from all over the world becoming attracted by the chanting of the name of Krishna have given up all material attractions. The members of the Krishna conscious movement have no interest in watching TV or going to cinema. They have no interest in reading mundane literature. They have no interest in sports or careers. They are not irresponsible. They perform their duties in the world, but their attention is clearly focused on Krishna. So this is a Vaishnava spiritual revolution going on at the present time. Just as Sri Ramanujacharya at his time inaugurated a Vaishnava spiritual revolution that is going on again all over the world by the chanting of Hare Krishna. By the mercy of Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of this International Society for Krishna Consciousness, he always identified himself as a servant of Krishna and the Vaishnavas. In his extensive writings on the commentaries on Gita, Bhagavatam and other Vaishnava literatures, he often quoted Sri Ramanujacharya's. From the very beginning of the appearance of the Gauriya Sampradaya in this world, the Gauriya Vaishnavas have been appreciating and incorporating the teachings of the Ramanuja Sampradaya. We find within Chaitanya Charitamrita, the most important work on Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that Sri Yamuna Acharya Stotra Ratnam is quoted. Bhavantamevanu charam nirantara prashanta nishesha. What's the next word? Prashanta nishesha manoratantara kataham aikantika nitya kinkara praharshiyashami sanata jivita. This Srila Prabhupada often quoted this, in which Sri Yamuna Acharya is praying that when will I be fortunate enough to be accepted as your servant? He is praying to Bhagavan. He considers that at that time the fluctuations of the mind by service to Bhagavan Narayana, the fluctuations of the mind will cease and it will become supremely peaceful. He prays, when will I be accepted as your selfless and eternal personal servant? then I shall live very happily with you as my master. So this is the spirit of pure bhakti, and having come to this sacred place, we bow our heads and pray for the mercy of all the great devotees of the past and the present, that we can actually develop pure bhakti following in their footsteps, and by their grace spread this movement of bhakti throughout the world. This is the great need of the world. The whole world is so confused with so much suffering, so much pain and strife and quarrel and killing. The world needs a solution to all its problems. The solution is to understand that we are all simply servants of the Supreme Lord, Narayana. So this should be propagated very widely. There's no other solution to the problems of the world. We invite everyone to join this simple and joyful process of chanting the names of Krishna. And in this way, we can individually make our lives successful and help others also to come out of their confusion and suffering and achieve the happiness which is only possible to attain in the service of Bhagavan